So I'm Martin Poulter. I'm a Wikimedian resident. I'm a Wikimedia project contributor. That's fine. I've come to this conference a few times before, and I usually go on about Wikipedia educational assignments. So that I don't seem like a broken record, here is something different. So, on the 25th of June last year, the US Supreme Court rendered its judgment in Obergefell versus Hodges, and this was the judgment that legalized same-sex marriage. And there's lots of celebration across social media, mainly by people putting this rainbow effect on their profile pictures. And nothing against people who do this, but it's kind of ephemeral. I want something more meaningful I can do with my time that Friday afternoon that celebrates what was learned. So a set of civil rights for one group of people in one country has been recognised. There are more battles. What can I do to promote learning from that? I'm a Wikipedia contributor, but the people who write about current events in Wikipedia are really good. And I knew as soon as the result was announced there'd be a pretty good Wikipedia article about it. There was. But I saw people sharing quotes from the text of the judgment. And people saying it was very beautifully written and powerfully written. So I could make that more accessible. It's available as a PDF from the Supreme Court website, but we know that official URLs change. A PDF's a very self-contained thing. But because it's the US government, there's no copyright restriction. So I could put it on Wikisource. Wikisource, whereas Wikipedia is the free encyclopedia, Wikisource is the free library. So Wikisource has hundreds of thousands of texts of different kinds. These can be reference books, biographies, poems, plays, or legal or constitutional documents. So I could make a Wikisource version of this. Now, I suspect even if you're an open culture advocate, you'd think the law, legal judgments, that's got to be, you don't hack that, you don't remix that, it's got to be no derivatives. But I do want to make a distinctive version of it. So I copied the text and set it out to Wikisource standards and give some context, give the Wikipedia article as a link, give some background as to what this case is and its significance. What else I can do is add links. So the judgment cites Cicero, Confucius, de Tocqueville about cultural ideas of marriage. And it mentions other cases, mentions Loving versus Virginia, which, if you know, is the case established interracial marriage legality. So if you know who Confucius and Cicero are, and if you know what Loving versus Virginia is, then that's the target audience for this article. But not everybody knows that. And just by the simple, amazing technology of web links, we can add context, so it's not just a self-contained thing that assumes you know all this background information. It becomes a web of knowledge linking. So, about Alex de Tocqueville, you link to the Wikisource profile, which tells you who he was when he wrote. Other people had already transcribed other relevant legislation and court judgments, so I could link to that for context, and that would give some context of what this is. I can also put the judgment in categories. So, because this is the same software platform, the same way of working as Wikipedia, so you could look at this in a list of decisions on civil rights, or decisions that consider the Equal Protection Clause of the US Constitution. So it becomes, with a bit of work, I'm just one contributor to the site, and other people are doing similar things. It goes from something that requires an intellectual threshold to understand to something more like an educational object, or something that's to support an educational process, something that exists in the web, and you can, as with Wikipedia, you go to it looking at one thing, and you end up with loads of other tabs looking at a concept you hadn't heard of, trying to create that process with civil rights legislation. But that was just one example. What I've spent a lot more time on is women's rights texts of the 17th and 18th century and the beginnings of what we now call feminism. So, for example, in JISC historic texts, I found page scans of this poem by John Duncan, and he's arguing that women can achieve greatness given the opportunity in the same way as men, and he cites women he thinks are great poets or great writers. But it's cryptic who he's referring to, because he's referring to people by pseudonyms, things that would be obvious to his audience in the mid-18th century, but baffling now. So it took a bit of research. He's got explanatory notes. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes I had to consult modern scholarship to see who he's talking about, and often there wasn't information about these people on Wikisource or maybe on Wikipedia, but I can make links. So I created a bunch of these profiles on Wikisource for some of these authors that Duncan praises up. And so they give when this person lived, what they're known by, what they're famous for. If there's a Wikipedia link to that, if there's other sources of biographical information about this person, give that the context. And Duncan mentions this poet as doing 2 particularly beautiful poems, and on Internet Archive I found a book with that poem in, again in the form of page scans. If something exists that's on the web as page scans, images of pages, then it's not searchable, it's not fun, you haven't got the verified text of it, it's kind of invisible. So I transcribed that poem. And that's it in its entirety. It's not a great amount of work, but that encourages another level of engagement with this Duncan poem. So you can look at that and in a formal or informal learning setting, ask why did he choose this as a particularly beautiful poem, and so on. Oh, one of the poets ended up as Susanna Duncan. He married one of the poets he praised, which cast doubt on his motives for the whole exercise. So I'm kind of moving up the Bloom taxonomy from spreading factual knowledge and background to this poem to enabling people to... With this method, we could build an 18th century web. These authors pay tribute to each other, cite each other, pay tribute to each other, and these could become actual links. So in one link you're taken to the thing they're talking about, or you're taken to background information about it. I've forgotten here. Also includes authority files from libraries, so we're identifying a particular person, not just, they're not confused with other people with a similar name. The links have to work both ways, otherwise it's just promoting inequality, because the obscure poets will cite the grand poets and not vice versa. Fortunately, Wikipedia and related sites have this "What links here" button. So if I go to Pope's Essay on Man, which is one of the most famous poems of this era, what comes up on What Links Here includes one of the poems I transcribed, which is Mary Leopold's line-for-line parody. So you can find, you can navigate through the web of information both ways and find maybe obscure stuff. So that's learning. I've learned a lot from that process, and I hope I'm lowering the threshold of effort and resource required for someone else to run a formal course or to learn themselves about this particular topic. How many minutes have I got? Okay, very quickly, I just want to point you to this where more... there's another Wikipedia sister site called Wikibooks. Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. That's very constraining in the type of material, in the style, and the referencing that you can have. Wikibooks is a lesser known, it's much more free, so its mission is educational material, and it's educational material at every level. So people are working on everything from preschool learning materials for counting small numbers up to postdoctoral how-tos on how to do genome sequencing in biology. And I'll direct you to one example. This is great. This is a set of cases and ideas in professional ethics. This is student-made stuff. So students in engineering at the University of Virginia have taken a professional ethics course, and they have to write a case study applying the concepts and theory from their course to a big something in the news. So Edward Snowden was unprofessional in he did what his paying employer wants him not to do, but in a sense he was professional in he lived the values that his organisation aspires to. And it's loads of things you've heard of, like the phone hacking scandal, or things that have been big news, but just not big news for us in the West. So they take a properly global approach. Yeah, I recommend to you, it's not all professional quality. Some of it's really good, some of it's okay, some of it's a bit ropey, and some of these case studies didn't get very far. And that's good. It means it's a challenging assignment, and it's clear what grade the students have to get for it. In the open education movement, we'd like to create huge volumes of freely reusable educational material across all subjects and levels. We'd also like to involve students in the process of deciding what's knowledge and the process of publication and the process of using research resources and summarising them. And in the context of this sort of community, those problems solve each other. And that's it. Oh, thank you. That's an ideal question. So, yeah, I'm doing... I'll be taking part in the Meet the Wikipedian session over lunch, but immediately after that, I'm doing a sort of training session in how to put stuff on Wikisource and, yeah, and how we run Wikisource events. So I did a Women in Science Wikisource event where we published papers by female scientists who didn't have electronically findable papers. Phil?
Martin, you mentioned at the end, too briefly, the idea of students creating Wikibooks. Could you compare that to students editing Wikipedia pages? What are the sort of strengths and weaknesses of the two?
Okay, so as I mentioned at the start, I'm a fan of Wikipedia educational assignments. Wikipedia is very constrained. For example, any fact is supposed to have a citation and an inline citation, and it's supposed to be an encyclopedic descriptive style of text which isn't instructional. So there's a lot of kind of text and exercises that you just can't have in Wikipedia just because of the mission of the site. Wikibooks is broader. You don't have to cite everything you put in. You're just required that what you're writing reflects a mainstream academic view. So you couldn't put a Wikibook about your conspiracy theory. So you've got to have some citations. But it's much more open in the style you can write and what you can particularly, what you can recommend that the user do things. You can kind of set assignments. Or you can analyse from a particular point of view, like analysing in terms of the theory of professionalism or the theory of corporate error.
So, sorry, can I follow up?
Oh, yeah, please do.
One of the restrictions within Wikipedia is that it's one article per subject. So, Wikibooks, could you say, ask your class to create a book about a subject that already exists?
That's a really good point, yeah. So you can create... It's organised by subject, but it doesn't have that kind of atomism that Wikipedia has, and you could have the same topic treated from different perspectives in the context of different books. Not just the educational level, but yes, maybe your interest is in the theory of professionalism. Both Wikibooks and Wikipedia exist for their purpose of creating particular resources and don't exist primarily to support educational projects. But again, that's kind of an advantage, and you've got to fit what the students are doing and give it a raison d'etre that goes beyond the course, which I thought that example was good, that it's not just what we learnt in this year, but it's a growing resource of case studies on this topic. So it's open in just the same sense. These other projects, so there's 11 Wikimedia projects in total, and they run on the same login system. So if you've got a Wikipedia login account, you've got a Wikisource and a Wikibooks account, and it's the same process of you have an edit button and you can make changes. And in theory, anybody can make changes, but there are cultural standards about what you can. So, like I said, you can add links or even annotations to a Wikisource text that are useful, but you can't editorialize and put your own opinions in links and annotations.
Thank you for
I think that's it. Thanks a lot.